Very warm welcome to every one of you here, the Venerables. Before I speak, Venerable Ajahn Brahm, please let me have permission to speak. Venerable Kaisi, very humble monk, always sitting at a little corner. But he has tremendous followings, same like Ajahn Brahm. Well, very warm welcome to all of you, and we would also like to thank Venerable Kaisi and the Penang Buddhist Association for inviting us to this year to hold a retreat here to help them to celebrate their 100 years centennial, 100 years celebration this year, and the retreat is the finale event of this year. We would like to thank the committee as well, Brother Peter and the committee who have been ably assisting us to get this retreat in order and start. Now, I think Ajahn Brahm doesn't need much introduction. As you all know, we all know that Ajahn Brahm is a first-class graduate in theoretical physics from University of Cambridge, and spiritual directors of many societies. I think it will be too long for me to recount here. And also now we have several branch monasteries as well throughout Australia, and millions spiritual teachers to millions of fans and students all over the world now. It's been, I think, we were very fortunate that I've known Ajahn Brahm for almost 25 years and more. It's almost a quarter century now, Ajahn. Imagine, quarter century ago. And Venerable Kaisi, almost 20 plus years now. We are all getting old, we are getting there. But it's been a wonderful journey. I think one of the most memorable to me was let me just allow me to share, was during the Bhikkhuni ordination, the courage and the vision of Ajahn Brahm to facilitate the Bhikkhuni ordination in Australia. That was one of the main Buddhist events of this century, I would imagine. And we are honored and privileged that we were able to stand with Ajahn Brahm all the way there from now until now. Okay. Allow me to share a little story with you all. Remember what Ajahn Brahm was saying this morning about his first book, Ajahn Brahm's first book, when the scriptures were all handwritten, and there was hardly any mistake. I can vouch for the truth of that, because in those days when I corresponded with Ajahn Brahm, it was all by letter and handwritten letters. There was no internet then, I think, so it was all handwritten. I was very fortunate. Every copy of those letters I still keep and I treasure it. Because it's in those little handwriting, you can see samples of Ajahn Brahm's handwriting in this soft as cotton, strong as steel, which celebrated Ajahn Brahm's 50th Bhikkhu anniversary last year. This year is Ajahn Brahm's 51st Vasa, that means 51 year as a Bhikkhu. The sample of the writing is there. In all those correspondence I had with Ajahn, there were no writing mistakes, no error, no cancellation. Unlike mine, there are cancellation, arrow up, arrow down, side. Even my I think I can't even read my own handwriting sometimes. Only my staff can. It's a marvel to them. So, yeah, if you wish to see some of the Ajahn Brahm handwriting, we managed to get a few copies of this delivered by hand from Australia. We have it over here at the counter. Oh, by the way, those at the back, there are this book and T-shirts available here. If you are interested, please see Sister Anne and Amy over there. Because whatever funds we collect from all this will go towards to support Anukampa Bhikkhuni project, which is the newly, Ajahn Brahm can tell you more about it. I think it would be more appropriate for Ajahn Brahm to tell you about the Anukampa project. So without further taking any further time, I would like to pass the floor to Ajahn.
Thank you. Hello. Yes. First of all, can you hear at the back? Yay, very good. So please come in whenever you can. There's plenty of chairs around, which you can go and take one of those chairs and sit comfortably. So first of all, I do remember when somebody saw that handwriting, they asked me, what script is that? Is it Times New Roman? Is it any of these other amazing fonts which people have on their computers? So it wasn't printed on a computer. It's my own handwriting. So it's even, I've invented a font. Really, to raise any funds for whatever, we should actually sell that font. Would that be a good idea? Anyway, as Buddhists, as Buddhist monks especially, we don't sell things. We actually do things. And that's one of the reasons why, when we have celebrations, it's a beautiful idea of a celebration, mostly because if you look at the news on the internet, or you see it in newspapers, they always put the negative news, all about terrible things which have happened, whether there's tragedies of people being shot, tragedies of people who are not really moral or honest, and who lead our countries and lead them into more conflict together. That is something I really can't understand, because a lot of times we can have enormous harmony between our leaders. And in those years I have been a monk, one thing which I do celebrate was that when I was invited, I didn't ask for this, I was invited to be the first non-Christian to give the Sunday sermon at our cathedral in Perth. I thought it was really cool. Why do you have to be a Christian to give the Sunday sermon? And it was even featured on the news, because it was actually newsworthy. For about 2,000 years, the only people who can go into a church, or it's an Anglican cathedral, had to be a Christian yourself. And they said, no, you only tell things about harmony and peace between people. So they invited me in, and I gave the sermon. And it was a wonderful occasion, simply because the place was packed. And when it was packed, no one knew who was a Buddhist and who was a Christian, because you don't have any signs on you. They just all mingle together. And it's wonderful to have things like that which create harmony in our world. And that's actually, what we really need more than anything else. So whenever there is a coming together of different faiths, different religions, different cultures, that's what really should be on the news of the evening. Even once we had this wonderful relationship with the only other monastery over in Western Australia when I first moved there, which was a Catholic monastery, Benedictines. And they were much older as a monastery than we were. So of course, we met together and discussed secret monk business, because they were monks too. And they had an abbot, and we also talked about secret abbot business. Because there were some people who would go from one temple or monastery to another, just, because we were kind. And so in particular, when I went to his monastery, it was a very, very, very old building. And when I went there, I couldn't help but ask him, in your monastery, in your temple, it's been over 200 years old, are there any ghosts? Because I like ghosts. When I was a student, I used to go and investigate ghosts. I was a member of the Psychic Research Society, and that's what we did. Any rumour of a ghost, we'd go up there to investigate it. So I asked the abbot there. His name was Abbot Placid. I said, come on, you can tell me. I've known you for a while. Are there any ghosts in your monastery? And he looked at me and said, no. In the Catholic Church, we don't believe in ghosts. Really? He said, yes. Well then, what about the Holy Ghost? You tricked me again. That's what our friendship was like. Even to the point that we had a TV crew come when they were visiting our monastery, Bodhinyana Monastery in Serpentine, where many of you have been. And I always remember the TV crew from one of the main channels over in Australia, they wanted to do a documentary. How can Buddhists and Christians come together and enjoy each other's company? What do they talk about? And so they spent the whole afternoon with us. And then I remember the cameraman say, he wasn't a Christian or a Buddhist, I don't know what religion he was, but he was saying, this is weird, this is wonderful. He said, I would never believe this was possible. But it was, he was seeing it. But unfortunately, you know what TVs are like, I hope you know anyway, that they only show about, they spend all afternoon there interviewing everybody, hour after hour after hour. But on the TV show, they only produced about 2 minutes. So all those hours they spent there. But at least it was the good that they saw that and they had the footage. And so it is how people can live in harmony together. And how you can celebrate this. And one of the celebrations which I think is important for you, and many of you have been involved in that celebration, is marriage. You know, I'm invited to many marriage celebrations. I haven't figured out why you would invite me. I've never been married. What would I know? But nevertheless, I keep on being invited because it's an important part of many people's lives. They choose a partner or they decide to give it a try. And it's amazing, even though I have never been married, how much I know about it. Even, I don't know why this happened, but I often tell people the scariest moment of my life, when I really was afraid, honestly, when people ask me, you've seen snakes? In some monasteries in Thailand, tarantulas would fall on you. I like tarantulas. They had nice itchy legs, so they crawl over you, and it was like being massaged. That's tarantulas. Deadly. But anyway, one of the things which I did remember about scariest moment was not seeing a snake on you or tarantulas. The scariest moment I ever had was just still a lay person at university. One of my friends was getting married, so they did the ceremony of marriage, and then myself and my friends, university, only about 19 or 20 years of age, and then we had a stupid little discussion. The stupid discussion was who's going to be married next? Just the guys. And then they looked at one of my friends. His name was Jeff. He actually became a British consul in Macau for many years. He spoke perfect Mandarin. But he was just a Westerner, an Angmo. And anyhow, one of my friends said, no, he'll be next, Jeff. And then we all looked at him and said, no one will marry him. We're just messing around. And then the next choice, they looked at me. My lay name was Peter, so I've got the connection with you there. No, he'll be next, pointing at me. And then they looked at me and they shook their heads and said, no one will marry him. It's amazing how well they knew it. But then, what really scared me, there was a young girl standing next to me, and she whispered in my ear, I would. Oh, I've never been so frightened in my life. Honestly, I made sure I kept a big distance from her. I feel sorry for her afterwards, but anyhow, that's what she said. But anyhow, one of the things to create that harmony, so we can celebrate. When some people choose to be married, if they choose to be married, whatever you do, please do it well. How many of you here are married? Put your hand up, come be honest. Okay. Do you argue with your partner? Why? And so one of the stories I always tell at marriages is how not to argue with your partner. Suppose you're walking in the gardens one afternoon, and as you're walking in the gardens, you hear this sound. Quack, quack. Quack, quack. And she looks at her husband, and the wife says, oh darling, do you hear that? That's a chicken. And he said, pardon? It's a chicken. She said, no, it's not a chicken. It's a duck. Ducks go quack, quack, not chickens. And she said, no, I'm sure that's a chicken. He said, it can't be, it's a duck. No, it's a chicken. No, it's a duck. D-U-C-K, duck. They started to have an argument. And he looked into her eyes. They were already about to burst into tears. He said, but I'm sure it's a chicken. And then he squeezed her hand gently and said, darling, I think you're right. That is a chicken. And he went quack, quack again. And so they continued their walk in peace and harmony. That was a very smart husband. Who cares whether it's a chicken or a duck? Is that really important? Or is it more important to have a harmonious marriage together? To be in love and understand what that love is. That's more important than being right. But how many people insist they want to be right, no matter what the cost? I think it's more important to be in harmony. Finding out it's a chicken or a duck, you can leave later. And anyway, because I've told that story for so many years now, they got the internet now. You got like Wikipedia. And somebody managed to scroll, they're wasting their time going through the internet, wasting a lot of time, but nevertheless they came up with the story of one chicken who was orphaned, poor thing, when it was young. And it was adopted and brought up by a family of ducks. Honest. And so there is at least one duck, so one chicken in the world, at least one chicken who goes quack quack. And I remember a Malaysian girl who I did her marriage blessings for her. And one day at our temple in Nolamara, we were having some celebration, and she came up to me and said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll spend the whole day here in your temple," this was in our temple in Perth, "working so hard." I said, "You don't need to work so hard, there's other people who can help and clean up." She said, No. I wanted to clean up so hard out of gratitude for you. You blessed my marriage, and the most important story was the one about the chicken and the duck. She said, my husband, who was a Westerner, an Australian guy, she was Malaysian, I can't remember where from, could have been Penang. But anyway, every time they were about to have an argument, he, the Ang Mo, would look at her and go, quack, quack. And then she thought, what's he doing? And then he would walk away. Another argument about to start, quack, quack. And then after about a month or two of this, she took him aside and said, why is it when I want to talk to you about something important, all you ever say is quack, quack? He said, don't you remember that little story which the monk gave us at our wedding ceremony? And then she remembered it. And she said, no more arguments. Instead of having arguments in those first months of their marriage, they had no arguments. And it meant they had a very harmonious start to their life together. She said, that was true, she said, and that's why I've come to thank you. That's how we celebrate. We celebrate with wisdom and with joy, and realizing what's most important in our life. And the other thing which I always love to tell about such celebrations of two people coming together is that, are there any Sri Lankans here this evening? This really works well for Sri Lankans, they love this story. I say that when you are single, you've got two legs, one body, you go whichever way you want. But when you're married, you're like one being with four legs. So you have to go in the same direction together. Otherwise it just doesn't work. And then, but first of all, you have to realize who is the most important person in that marriage. Who is the most important person in the marriage? Don't say anything. This is being recorded. You're part of my... And I often have this wonderful opportunity to teach. Sometimes people don't listen. But if it's your marriage, you listen very intently. It's also for those of you who criticize me, say, Ajahn Brahm why do you tell so many funny stories or jokes at your talks? The reason is, if I don't, none of you will remember anything. But you always remember the jokes. But underneath those jokes, those funny stories, there's some very powerful, deep Dhamma. And so I do this because I know that people are listening and I know how it's going to affect their life in the future. So I usually start with the bride. I look into her eyes and I say to her, now you are a married woman. You must never think of yourself anymore. That's just being selfish. That's not a marriage. And I look into the partner's eyes, the man. Say the same to him. You're a married man now. You must not think of yourself either. And what I've found in Australia, I'm not sure if it's the same in Penang, because I've done so many marriage ceremonies in Australia. When I look into the husband's eyes, he always hesitates. Honest. The wife always says yes straight away. Is that the same in Penang? But then still looking at the guy, I said, and from now on, now you're married, you must never think of her, your wife. You must never think of your wife once you're married. And then to the wife, now you're a married woman, you must not think of him, your husband. Just like the people I say this to live, just like you now, you're looking at me wondering, has Ajahn Brahm misstated the story? Is he gone crazy? Is he mad? What do you mean you must not think of your partner? In marriage, you must never think of your partner, nor must you think of yourself. You must only think of us. Good, you've heard this before. But it changes the whole ceremony. The ceremony is not to celebrate your marriage, it's to celebrate our marriage. You're in this together. And anyhow, over in Sri Lanka, I often compare that marriage to like an elephant. An elephant has got 4 legs and 1 body, has to go in the same direction. So who are the front legs of the elephant? Who are the back legs? I think it's the same in Penang. In Penang, if you had an elephant in Penang, the front legs would have to be the man, the back legs the woman. It's culture. Is that correct? But please always remember, in Sri Lanka and also Penang, if there aren't any elephants here, elephants always walk backwards. That is the truth of the matter. So anyway, it's all about us. So ceremonies I try to remember these events with joy. Other times, we have our little ceremonies, and we actually just don't understand how to make the best of them. It's honestly one of the ceremonies which I have to do a lot of, but I really enjoy, is funerals. I enjoy them, honestly. You know why? It's not because I'm a sick monk. When I go to any of your funeral services, we always have something in our culture called eulogies. Eulogies are good speech, where we remember all the wonderful qualities that person shared with us. If it's like any Chinese culture person who's just passed away, a lot of times they tell me what a wonderful cook they were. I don't know why that is. Can you all cook that well? and how generous they all are with their food. Sometimes they cook for their whole family and everyone comes and they don't ever leave. That's how delicious their food is. But what I really like is just when they just remember the beautiful things about life. They don't celebrate. They never celebrate how wealthy the person is. They don't celebrate how skilled they are at some sport or whatever. What people celebrate at the end of a person's life, when we draw all of those activities together, what they celebrate is all those beautiful times they helped one another, they opened their door to you, when they fed you, when they just put their arms around you, or just to counsel you, to help you, to serve you, to be with you in times you really needed somebody. Just what a wonderful mother they were. What a wonderful granddad they were. That's what people remember. I often, to know what people celebrate and how they celebrate, in the old days, whenever I used to go to people's houses, they'd always have a few photos, on their shelf. What they had, the photos on their shelf, was maybe when they got their university degree, or again when they got married, when they had their kids. When you managed to get your kids, to get through their university or school, and then you could go on a holiday to wonderful places like Serpentine in Australia, my monastery. And you enjoyed that, and you have photos on your wall. How many times on the wall of your house, or in your photo albums, do you have photographs of when you had to do the exam to finish school? You have it when you're finished, when you throw a hat up in the air. How many times do you have photographs when you have an argument with your husband-to-be? You have it when you have a beautiful marriage ceremony. How many times do you have a photograph of yourself or your partner or your loved one in hospital being really sick? We celebrate the other half of life with photographs. That's why when anybody gets a camera out and points it at me, which many of you do, have you ever noticed I always pause and smile for the photograph? I do that because I'm celebrating the fact that you feel that I am handsome enough. Handsome, can you call me handsome at my age? No, but it's like a smile, it's a friendship, it's a way of trying to connect that friendship as a beautiful thing to celebrate in your life. That's why I love it when people do that. They're taking something which they find joy with. And so if you've got a photograph which you really like, please put it on your iPhone. Please do it so it's easy to access. There's so many reasons to be sad in this world, sometimes. But there's so many reasons to be happy as well. Make your choice and learn how to celebrate the beautiful things of life. And I was going to mention this earlier, but now I'm mentioning it because I have to. That one of the most inspiring Malaysians I ever met, I know you're thinking now, who could that be? Was the chief priest, Kesri Dhammananda. Do you remember him? What happened when he was being treated for the cancer and the doctor said, there's nothing more we can do, you're going to die soon? What did he do? Did he start crying? Did he start, oh, I'm too young to die? He laughed. I remember meeting his doctor. And the doctor said, yeah, it's true. As soon as he was told the cancer was incurable, he burst out laughing. Could you do that? What he was saying is, what's wrong with dying? He'd worked really hard, now he could take a rest. It's just I sometimes think of my life. Been a monk for 51 years now. Goodness, shouldn't I be able to retire after 50? No, you mean and cruel. But that's the only way that monks can retire, in a box. But in the meantime, as people say, Ajahn Brahm, you must think outside the box for the next 20 years. But it's also wonderful, no matter what happens in life, to be able to see the joyful side of it. Just like a case Sri Dhammananda. I've had many lovely conversations, and many of his stories he got from me, I must admit. Like I told him about this guy, this man in KL. He was so rich that when his doctor told him he was about to die, he informed his wife saying, look, when I die, please don't put me in any clothes in the coffin. Please cremate me naked. And his wife said, what do you mean? You've got enough clothes, you're a rich man. You don't need to sort of be cremated naked. He said, listen, I know where I'm going when I die. You don't need clothes down there. It's already hot enough. And he said, no. She said, I've got some clothes. He said, no, it's my last wish. Please cremate me naked. So she had no choice, it was his last wish. So he got taken to the crematorium and he was burnt naked. A couple of days later, he appeared in their bedroom as a ghost, as a spirit. Have you ever seen any spirits? Have you? You have. I think all of you have seen spirits. I've seen hundreds of spirits. The real ones we should be very scared of. Whiskey, gin. Those are the dangerous spirits. Ghosts are okay. But anyway, his ghost came and he asked his wife, he said, darling, have you still got my old golfing trousers and my gardening jumper? And she said, yes, but what do you want those for? I thought you went down to the hell realms. And he said, yes, I did. But there's so many rich people down in hell, they've installed air conditioning now. Could you hear that in the back? Because only the people in the front started laughing. Let me thank you for your laughter. You're celebrating a silly joke. But I told that to the chief priest, and so he told it at his next lecture. He had a good sense of humour. And right to the very end. And that's something which is not so celebrating death, but celebrating life. All those wonderful things which he did, leading up to that point, where you have to leave this realm, go to another realm. Can't you celebrate? Even when somebody passes away. And that is one thing which I often tell people, even at funeral services. When my own father died. My own father died when I was only 16. At home. And my mother woke me up in the middle of the night. I can't rouse your father. And so I went to the bedroom, tried to shake him awake, but he was dead. How do you feel when your parents die, or someone you love very much dies. You heard me, yes, you should know by now, that one of the great lessons my father taught me, I wasn't a Buddhist yet. I didn't know very much about life. I was only 16. But I do remember him taking me aside one day, he was a very poor man, and he said, "Son, however you turn out in life, whatever you become, whether it's a criminal or, I don't know, a worker somewhere," he never understood what a monk was, he never mentioned that. "However you turn out in life, good or bad, please know the door of my house will always be open to you." And I never understood the power of what he meant until much later in my life when I became a monk myself. When I became a monk, I had more time to consider and to understand the power of those words. It wasn't his house he needed to open the door to me for. His house was a very, very poor council flat in London. You could probably fit about 3 or 4 of them in this room here. But he said, I understood what he meant was the door of his heart would always be open to me. No matter what I did, no matter how I turned out. And from that I got the title of that first book, Opening the Door of Your Heart. It's a very good title, so good that once when one disciple was looking for that book in a huge bookshop in Adelaide, that she couldn't find it. So she asked at the counter, "Opening the Door of Your Heart by Ajahn Brahm, have you got that book?" And the counter said, "Yes, it's a good seller." So they went on the computer looking for it. And they found several copies of it in the medical section. Honestly. Someone there had just seen the title, Opening the Door of Your Heart, and they put it in the wrong section. But nevertheless, the most important part of that for me was the idea that this was unconditional love. The door of your heart was open, no matter what the other person ever did. Because I started the talk this evening about marriages, have you ever told your partner that? Darling, husband, wife, please know the door of my heart will always be open to you, no matter what happens. Can you do that? And number 2, can you look in the mirror and say that to yourself? Me, this person I've lived with all my life, and I know the truth of all the things I've done or failed to do. Can I honestly say to myself, me with all my faults and successes, the door of my heart is open to me, myself. For those of you on this meditation retreat, I ask you to do that when you go to the washroom. Look at your face, all your faults and successes in life, and personally give yourself a few moments of unconditional acceptance. The door of your own heart is open to you. That's a beautiful ceremony. And one of the reasons why we do beautiful ceremonies like that, it works. Some of you who think that you've got no opportunity to get deep meditation, you can. That's how it works. You let yourself be. Door of heart totally open. whether it was a duck or a chicken, it doesn't matter. The peace, the happiness, the unconditional part of love is the most important. And if you can do that, meditation can be so peaceful, so easy. You don't have to change anything or fix anything. You allow this moment to be as it is. You know, I was a bit concerned this evening whether we'd get here on time. We went through a way through Penang I've never seen before. And somebody reminded me that once when I was in Sri Lanka giving talks, I went to Kandy up in the centre of Sri Lanka, and the person taking me back from Kandy into Colombo, they had lived in Colombo all their life. They were Sri Lankan. They should know the way. And they said, but I also know the shortcut. And from that, I'm always scared when anybody says shortcut. They got totally lost. And it took us about 3 hours more than everybody else. Everybody else had got to the destination, home in Colombo. We were still somewhere south of Colombo, about 60 or 80 miles south of Colombo, unaware where we're supposed to go next. And they thought we'd had an accident or got kidnapped or something. So anyway, that's why any shortcuts, even in meditation, be careful. But this is a valid shortcut when you give yourself that unconditional kindness. A kind of little ceremony which you can do, which is really worthwhile. But nevertheless, there are other ceremonies which as a young man I kind of rejected. And one of those ceremonies was when you got all these certificates, from the university, for getting the bachelor's degree and the master's degree and any other sort of certificate. You know what I did when I became a monk? I tore up all those certificates. I'm a monk, you're not supposed to have an ego. What do you want certificates for? And once when I went to visit my mother, I found she still had kept a master's degree which I had. A beautiful certificate for Cambridge University for her son, got a master's. And when I saw it, I said, we don't need this anymore, I'm a monk. What does a monk need a degree for? So I tore it up and threw it in the waste bin in my mother's kitchen. She never said anything. Then I went into my room to meditate for an hour. And when I came out of the room, I saw my mother. She'd rescued all those little pieces which I tore up and was on the kitchen table with this sellotape, sticking them all back together again. That's, I think, the most ashamed I've ever been. I tore that up because I didn't think it was worth anything. I was a monk. We don't celebrate egos. What I forgot, that I'm not just one monk. That my mother loved to see that certificate. Her son had made it to university, had made it to a big university, and got this little certificate. I forgot my mother's emotions. Sometimes we celebrate not because we want to, for the sake of others. That compassion and kindness. And so, my goodness, 100 years Penang Buddhist Association has been going. And every time I've been walking through this place this year, it's actually gorgeous. What you've done here, not just you two over there, but the whole committee and the whole lay people. You have a wonderful resource here, a refuge, where people can teach the Dhamma. You've got the resources of the Dhamma. It's open, it's convenient, and even for me, as Chalpo knows, that I really just dislike the hot weather. The aircon you've got here, this is really nice, thank you for that. So sometimes it's worth celebrating. To the point that these days I still celebrate my birthdays. And I asked in the elevator coming up here, I was taken into this, it's the old person's lift. Is that correct? Usually I would say, no, I'm not old. And I'd take the stairs. I can walk up the stairs well enough. But no, they needed to take me in the elevator so I could see it. Thank you for that. I went in there because of you. Have you ever done that before? You don't think about yourself, you celebrate other people's kindness. Much of the food which I'm given, it's not that I would like to eat that, I will always receive it because you give it to me. Do you understand that? The joy of giving needs a receiver at the other end. And even, I remember this, there was one lady who was dying of cancer in hospital over in Melbourne. And then she said she'd knitted a pair of socks for me. Have you ever seen me wear a pair of socks? Even when I went to UK recently, and it was freezing, -3 degrees at night, I still didn't wear socks. I've got very good circulation in my blood vessels, so I don't feel cold there. But when she offered me a pair of socks, and I gave her a blessing for them, I was smart enough to notice on her room in the hospital, they had a window which overlooked the car park. And I saw the car in which I was driven to that hospital parked in that car park. So what did I do? When I went down the stairs to where the car park was, I quickly stopped and put on those socks. And when I walked to the car, I kicked up my feet. I knew she would be watching. My goodness, she was. I looked up at the window, and there she was, beaming and laughing. He's wearing my socks. He's wearing my socks. That was a celebration. That's why we celebrate, to bring joy into the world. So anyway, at my birthdays, we always make some sort of celebration. But how many of you know my age? I was born in August 1951. So how old am I now? Actually, how old was I at my last birthday? In August 2025. I was 888. Months. Why celebrate years? Especially the number 8. 888, 3 8s. That was my last birthday, last August. And that's really auspicious. And so on that day, for my birthday, you always want to... This is something I learned in Buddhism, which I really respect. On your birthday, if you celebrate it, it's not looking for presents, what you can receive. It's what you can give to others. I remember trying to teach that to the kids in the Dhamma school for youth over in Australia. If it's your birthday, you don't expect presents. You give presents to all your friends. Do you do that in Penang as well? Yes or no? No. Look, when I said that to these kids, they said, no, I like to receive presents on my birthday. And I asked them, how many birthdays do you have a year? Only one. So you only receive presents once a year. If you give it to your friends and your friends give it to you, you receive presents many times a year. And so the kids said, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And it is true that you get much more happiness when you give rather than receive. And it's also, honestly, what does a monk want? They're very easy to look after. Please excuse me, but at one conference which I went to over in New Zealand many years ago, that one of the people also giving a talk at that conference was an economist at Reading University, who was also on the board of the Bank of England, a really smart economist. And number 3, he was a Buddhist. So talking with him, he had the paper he was supposed to deliver, but he made up another one that night. The economic benefit of monks and nuns. The economic benefit. And he said that in the time he's been researching this, he knows that when you have monks and nuns in the neighborhood, you see the monks and nuns, you talk with them, listen to their advice, the economy, productivity goes up. It goes up a lot. They are financially beneficial to the community. And he said to prove it, he worked out how expensive it is to look after one monk or one nun. And he compared it, because he was a New Zealander but living in England now, he compared it to when you have a pet. As a very valid comparison. Because look at dogs, they live in little cooties, they're called kennels. And you take them for a walk every morning, just like, when monks go on alms round, you go on alms round every morning. And the dog is always happy to see you, and looks after you and cares for you, just like good monks and nuns. And he said it's actually less expensive in ringgit or dollars or whatever, less expensive to look after a monk than it is to look after a dog. We're cheaper. So he ended his talk by saying every home should have one. Do you agree? So that's why when I see that you're having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Sangha here, celebrates. It's really good for the community to see those monks and nuns and celebrate them. That's one of the reasons why Chaupo did ask me, can you please say something about the nuns over in UK? And we did. I know it was controversial at the time. One of the reasons it was controversial was because everybody knew that I was the expert on the rules. They couldn't argue with me. What we did was legitimate, only they didn't like it. I can't understand why. But now we have bhikkhunis in many places in the world. I don't know why also that they are discriminated against. You are. But I do also remember over in Sri Lanka, we managed to get lots of women to become bhikkhunis. But for many years now, they haven't had full recognition from the government because of that, this year, when I went to Sri Lanka, I went there in particular to try and do something about their recognition. They cannot have on their passports, on their ID certificates, that they are a bhikkhuni, a fully ordained Buddhist nun. And I even went to go and see the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka at the time. And she was surprised. But in June this year, I was very happy to see the Supreme Court over in Sri Lanka judged that the discrimination was against the Sri Lankan constitution, against human rights. And they made it so that the bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka are now fully recognized. Thank you for clapping. I never expected that. But for me that was a celebration. And when I said that as a celebration, it's amazing, there's progress. Buddhism is coming into our modern world. Just as the Buddha wanted it to. Even the Buddha 2,500 years ago. For those of you who haven't heard the story, that when the Buddha had just become fully enlightened, still sitting under the Bodhi tree, Mara came to see him. You all know who Mara is? He's like the one who wants to control everybody. He doesn't want to let people become free. And that's one of the reasons why our centre in Perth is in the suburb No La Mara. No La Mara. Have you ever figured out what that means? No La Mara. You can't go in there. But anyway, Mara came up to the Buddha and said, okay, I admit that you're fully enlightened, you escaped from me. But please, Mara, don't teach. Teaching is just so hard. You get so tired and people ask you tough questions. Just you enlighten, just enter Nibbana and have a peaceful time. And the Buddha said, no. I will not enter Parinibbana, full Nibbana, until I have managed to generate a big sangha of monks, a big sangha of nuns, a big community of 8 precept laymen, 8 precept white lay women, to continue this teaching for a long periods of time. When I've done that, then I will enter Parinibbana. And then, many years later, about 45 years later, in Visali, at the Chapala shrine, Mara came to see the Buddha again. When he came to see him again, he said, you promised that once there is a large sangha of monks, the various stages of enlightenment, a large sangha of bhikkhunis, a large number of faithful lay women and lay men, when that fourfold assembly is strong, then you will enter Parinibbana. And the Buddha said, yes, you're right. So he said, in 3 months' time, I will Parinibbana. And that's what happened at Kusinara. You can check that out if you wish. It's in the sutras. It's not because Ananda asked or didn't ask. It was because he was keeping a promise he made when he was first enlightened 45 years ago. So it's great. We're actually following the Buddha's suggestions and celebrating that. I don't know about you, but when I see these bhikkhunis, always trying to help them make sure they have enough stuff and everything else. When I was in England recently visiting Venerable Chanda, Bhikkhuni, she's still trying to pay off the loan to purchase this new piece of land. You know who gave her that loan?
Sorry.
I've got no money, but I talked our Buddhist Society West Australia committee to make that loan. And we could afford it, so we made the loan. And she still owes a bit. And the committee is kind of, well, it's about time. Ajahn Brahm, can you do something? So, any funds raised at this retreat. It's part of my 51st anniversary as a monk. I raised some, because in December I became a monk, December the 5th. So anything which is raised going to Anukapa Bhikkhuni project, so I can pay off the loan which I told my committee to make. So eventually goes off to Bodhinyana Monastery anyway, or to Jhana Grove Retreat Centre. But it helps. The nun have one less thing she has to worry about. Creating a beautiful monastery in England. And also, if any of you ever go to visit UK, why not go and see what I'm talking about? It's just outside the town of Oxford. I got into a lot of trouble from that with my friends in UK. They said, why did you build the nuns' monastery in Oxford when you come from Cambridge? I said, fair point. It's a beautiful place for the future of Buddhism overseas. So that's my little challenge to you. Already we're celebrating. It's a beautiful piece of land. The fact that we've got it already. We've got some nuns. First novice ordination this year. From a novice, then a short while later become another bhikkhuni. And you see Buddhism grow in these places. And you're part of it. Isn't that worth celebrating? That's why we celebrate. Thank you for listening. Now, I know that we're supposed to finish about 9:30, but I wanted to make an opportunity for anybody to ask questions. Because it's the wrong thing just to lecture you. Has anyone got a question they would like to ask about celebrations or the talk this evening? While you're thinking about asking a question, there's one of the Buddha's suttas where there was a gentleman who came up to him and asked, why is it that some people are very wealthy, other people work even harder than the wealthy ones, but they still find it difficult to save any money? Why? And the Buddha gave a very good answer. Such a good answer, the man asked a second question. Why is it that some women are very ugly and other women are very beautiful? Why? Not about makeup or going to a spa or going to South Korea to get a facelift. Why? But before I give the answer the Buddha gave you, when I told this story once in Singapore, one of the women really complained. She was very upset at me. She said, why did you mention the word ugly when you were looking at me? So now I always look at the ground. And the Buddha gave a good answer. You know the answer to that? He said, when you are virtuous. The virtue has its own beauty, and so the next lifetime will be really beautiful. And the last question was, why is it that some people are so intelligent? You know, you have your kids and you send them to school and they always do really well. Sometimes that they go to university. Other kids You give them special training, personal tutors, you spend a lot of money trying to motivate them, and they're still stupid. I think you're nodding your head, you know what I mean. And the Buddha said, the reason why you get reborn as very intelligent in your next life is because you ask many questions in this life. Anyone got a question? I usually get a question from one of these. Okay, yes. Okay. You can stand up, speak loudly. Yeah, go on. Speak loudly and I'll repeat it.
Stuck in a 1 hour traffic jam, it really requires like not 100% mindfulness but 200% because people are just trying to cut over you, take advantage of every little space. So my question is, what is your interpretation of whole body breathing? I believe that is the fourth type of breathing in the Anapanasati Sutra. So because there are two different interpretations. One is like from the nose you breathe in to the abdomen and then out again, the whole body breathing. The other interpretation is just the nose, the in, until the middle point and then go out again. That's the second interpretation as one body, whole body breathing. So I liked Venerable to
give the third
enlighten
interpretation.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the third interpretation of the whole body of breath breathing. That's in the fourth stage of the first tetrad of Anapanasati. Can you hear that? Well, anyway, I'll give the simile first and then see what you think about afterwards. See, this is my finger. Can you watch it go from your left to right? It's like a breathing in, breathing out. See it breathing in, breathing out. I've just seen just go from left to right and then from right to left. Now, you notice whether that's long or short. And then the fourth stage, the whole body of the breath, and the whole finger movement. I see it from the very left to the very right. I see it pause, and it goes out again from the right to the left. I see the whole of the breath, from left to right, from right to left. When I look over here, I'm not watching the whole of the breath anymore, just some of it. That's what that stage of meditation means. It's not just the body. By this time, your body should have mostly disappeared. All you have is the breathing. Please, I'll pause a little bit because I hope there's many more questions, but that's a very good subject for my talk tomorrow morning, when I wanted to go more on just how we do the meditation. But I will say a bit more now. When I started meditation, the tip of my nose, I was taught, watch the breath at the tip of your nose. My problem was, I had hay fever. My nose was blocked. That's why even now, sometimes Chalpo has said, have you got a cough? Because sometimes I can cough. That's not sort of a cold or a cough. It's just, I did inherit from my father some of his allergies. He had asthma. I don't have asthma, but sometimes my nose gets blocked if there's any sort of contaminants get in there, especially during the hay fever season. Living in Western Australia, whenever the farmers make hay, I've got to be very careful because the pollen gets up my nose and it blocks my nose. Yes, okay, but I don't need it anymore, thank you. But so much of the year I couldn't watch the breath at the tip of my nose. There was no breath there. And then later on I found out that another Burmese teacher said, watch the breath at your belly. But when I became a monk, that was impossible. Because when I started watching my belly was right next to my tummy. I was a young man, I was hungry. As soon as you watch your belly, you notice how empty your stomach is at this time of the day for monks. So that was very difficult. But then later on I realized that Buddha never taught nose meditation. He never taught belly meditation. He taught breath meditation. No matter how hungry I might have felt, no matter how blocked my nose was, I was still breathing. So all I needed to do was to know, is my breath going in or my breath going out? That's all. I did not need to know the location of the breath. One less thing to be concerned about. It worked perfectly for me. It was an advantage I had, because straight away I just knew the breath was going in or the breath was going out. I never bothered with where. So I could just see the breath had just started going in. It was in the middle of the in-breath, or towards the end of the in-breath. And I was also confused with long breath, short breath. How much is a long breath or a short breath? Because most of the time my breath was kind of in between. It wasn't long, it wasn't short, it was just as it was. And so I realized you never needed to know that. You just know the whole of the breath going in till it gets to the end. And those of you on retreat, again I will mention this again tomorrow, when it gets to the end of the in-breath, how long before the breath starts going out? When it goes out and reaches the end of the out-breath, how long before it starts going in again? Is the gap between the in-breath and the out-breath the same length as between the out-breath, the in-breath and the out-breath? Which is longer? I only say that because it makes it more interesting for you. And after a while, it gives you something to do. You're Penangese. You want to do something. So it gives you something which doesn't disturb you, but makes it a little bit more interesting. Sometimes over in Australia, you teach breathing in something positive. Imagine what peace is, what health is. I don't know how many of you are sick with some sort of disease or whatever. You know my disease I've got? I should have told you already. I've got terminal disease. Because I go to so many airports, I spend most of my life in airport terminals. That's why I've got terminal disease. I've got some real questions here. That's all. 2 questions. So I better start doing this, otherwise we'll be up here all night. So anyway, the whole body of the breath is actually the whole of the breath. And even the Buddha says that in the Anapanasati Sutta. Anyway, how can be grateful to celebrate small things in life instead of just big moments only? First of all, when you go to sleep tonight, before you go to sleep, what's happened today which you're very happy with? And who's made that possible? When I go to bed at night, I sometimes remember, who's fed me today? Who made me that lovely cup of tea this morning? Because you know that, I don't know why, but I always like Theravada tea. You know what Theravada tea is? Theravada tea is from Sri Lanka. And in that tea, they put condensed milk, tin kiri. That's a Sri Lankan word for it, tin kiri. Kiri means milk, it's a Pali word for milk. And tin is like a tin, milk in a tin. I don't know, I love that stuff. But anyway, I'll tell you something really important. Listen carefully. Why is it that many people in the world, especially people like communists, why they drink herbal tea? Why do they drink herbal tea? Because they're not allowed proper tea. Proper tea. Proper tea. That's only a joke. I only heard that recently. So, you're grateful that you can come to a beautiful place like this and be looked after. So when you go to bed tonight, just celebrate the fact you're on retreat. Wow. I celebrate the fact that today and tomorrow I can come here, do a lot of meditation, and meet beautiful people. And I really do enjoy meditation. I don't count it as work. So that's one of the reasons why I enjoy teaching retreats. And next question here. As a married man, how do we balance our spiritual pursuit with worldly desires and family responsibilities? It's so easy. Sometimes, as a married man or a married woman, does your family allow you to come on retreat? They should do. There was this guy many, many years ago, an Australian guy, and he told me this story. He asked his wife, there's a retreat on over in Perth, only a weekend retreat. Can I go? His wife said, at the weekend? Of course not. We've got to look after the kids, send them to the sport. You've got to do the shopping. You've got to clean up. Remember you told me you're going to clean up that mess in the garage? No, of course you can't go. There's too much to do. You can't go on a retreat. No. He was a very smart man. He said, okay, darling. And he just helped with the housework. Next time there's a weekend retreat. There's another weekend retreat. Can I go? No. Mother's visiting this weekend. I need your help. There's so much to do. You can't just go on your city retreat. You have to help me. Okay, darling. The next time there was a retreat, he asked again. He'd always ask. She'd always say no. And then, one day he asked, can I go on the retreat this weekend? And she was so upset at him. She said, okay, you go on your city retreat, leave me with all the housework and everything else. He took that as a yes. And off he went. But when he came home, after just 2 days of meditation, he was such a wonderful husband. She saw the difference even just 2 days had made. The next time there was a weekend retreat, he didn't even need to ask. She gave him the money and said, off you go. When people see the benefit, of course they want to go. And of course your family see the benefits. Very often, but sometimes even just doing an evening meditation class. We used to do those classes on a Tuesday evening in our Armadale group. And I remember many women would actually come and say, I never felt like coming this evening because I was at work all day and I was really tired and lots to do at home. But my children said to me, Mummy, you going to meditation tonight? No, I'm too tired. Mummy, are you going to meditation tonight? I said, no, darling. Mummy, you must go to meditation tonight. Why? Because you're a much nicer mummy after you come home for meditation. Your kids can see that. And even at work, this was one of the executives over in Sydney. She came to Jhana Grove in Perth to actually do a 9-day retreat. She arrived at midnight or something, so I never saw her the first day. But she told me she had to beg her boss, please, I need to go on a retreat. Her boss eventually gave in. But then, she had some really nice meditation during the retreat. And when she went back to work on a Monday morning, she sent this email to me. She said, my boss told me, what have you been doing on that retreat? And this is what the boss said. What drug has this Ajahn Brahm been giving you? You're totally happy, you've changed. I don't care what it is, but please next time you go, bring me some back. Even your bosses will realize you're a much nicer worker, much nicer person to be with by doing a meditation retreat. That's how you do your familial responsibilities. And your responsibilities to your work. I'll never forget the story, a long time ago now, where this lawyer working in New York, he was getting very stressed out. You can imagine why, because that was the time in New York they had the death sentence. If someone was convicted, he would actually be killed. And so he was defending them. Can you imagine how stressful that would be? If you made a mistake, your client was gone. And so one day, together with his secretary, they cleaned out a cupboard in his office. Just papers and stuff, you can store them somewhere else. And he put a cushion in that cupboard. And at lunch hour, or lunch half an hour, his secretary locks him in his cupboard so he can meditate for half an hour. And if anybody calls or gets any phone call, really important, I need to speak to that lawyer. I'm sorry, he's in his cupboard. And he said that makes him a much better lawyer. More articulate, he can see sort of loopholes and stuff to get his client off a death penalty. And he's much more relaxed in the afternoon. A much nicer boss for the secretary to endure. Have you got any bosses at work who are really sort of hard to talk with because they're always so busy they don't take much account of you? Find a cupboard and lock them in there for half an hour every day to meditate. They're much nicer afterwards. And more productive as well. Well, I've been talking like this for years and years and years. And one of those similes about, I've already given it many times, how heavy is the cup? The longer you hold it, the heavier it feels. If you hold it for too long, you get worn out, you get stressed, burnt out. So what you do when you feel stressed is you put it down. Hardly anybody does that. They keep working through the stress. And they just get even more tired. So tired you can go home and your poor husband or wife or your kids have to endure you. That's one of those stories. I can't resist this one because it's one of my favorite ones. And I think I gave this in Indonesia on a radio show. It was hosted by this Muslim girl. And this Muslim girl, I told her this story about stress. This was in Indonesia somewhere. And I said that sometimes it's like the story of a kid who's waiting for his father to come home. His father came home late. He was really tired and stressed. His little kid waiting for him said, Daddy, how much do you earn at work per hour? And the father, who was really tired, said, no, I don't need to tell you that, be quiet. And the son was really determined. Daddy, how much do you earn per hour at work? Look, I've told you, son, None of your business. But Daddy, dollars, cents, how much you earn each hour at work? That's it. 3 times I said, no, go to your room, you're grounded. So he sent his poor son to the room. He was too tired to answer silly questions, what he thought was a silly question. So his son went up to the room. The father had a drink of coffee or something, relaxed a little bit, and felt he'd been too cruel to his son. I shouldn't have shouted at him. I don't know why he wanted to know that, but I was just angry because I was tired. So he went up to his son's bedroom, knocked on the door, let himself in, and said to his son, "Son, I don't know why you asked that question, but if you really want to know, I earn $20 an hour at my work." $20 an hour, thank you, Daddy. Now, can I please borrow $10? But his son straight away, and so the father said, he'd normally get really upset and angry, but he thought, I'd already got angry at my son once tonight, I'm not going to get angry twice. So he said, okay, I'll loan you $10. And so he opened up his wallet and gave his son a $10 note. Thank you so much, Daddy. Then the son opened up a drawer next to his bed where there were some coins. He counted out another $10, making 20 in all. And he presented it to his father. Daddy, can I now please have 1 hour of your time? And paid for it. I don't know how that affects you. This interviewer on the radio started crying. She told me afterwards she was looking after her son as a single mother. He was so tough, and she wanted to do extra work to get extra money. But what the son wanted was just extra time with their mum. Do you understand that? What's really important? So that's actually how you practice your familial responsibilities. Spend time with your kids. I remember disciples in Singapore telling me this. There was one kid who committed suicide. He was living in one of the MRT flats and jumped off the balcony. He left a suicide note. All I ever wanted was more time with my mum and dad. Can you understand that? How we can be grateful to celebrate small things. I did that one already.
Yeah, only 2 questions.
Sorry?
Only 2 questions.
Only 2 questions, okay. Any other questions before we finish off? Okay, yes, go on.
Yeah, Ajahn, on a lighter note, yeah, you mentioned that during your university days,
Yeah?
the scariest thing in your life is getting married. Why is that? Why is it the scariest thing?
It was the scariest thing to me because the girl who kind of proposed to me, I wasn't interested in her at all. And I knew that she was obviously very interested in me. How can I avoid this? It's not, at that time, it was not that I did not want to get married as a student. It was just that later on, when you did find a nice girl to be with, then I did my first meditation retreat. I never realized it at the time, what meditation does to you. Please be warned. People say, are there any bad things which happens to you in meditation? The only danger happens to men and women in meditation. If you meditate very successfully, you tend to lose your hair. become monks or nuns. You do this because you love it. When I became a monk, actually it was a novice monk, for the first, I remember it to this day. It's over 51 years ago now. And I remember having nightmares. The first 3 nights. I'd wake up in the middle of the night in this monastery in Bangkok, and what I remember was causing that nightmare, I thought I was a layperson. And I opened my eyes and saw my brown robes folded neatly next to my bed on the floor. I was a monk, I really was. And then I'd fall into a very peaceful, delightful sleep. And that repeated itself the next night and the night afterwards, 3 nights. And that kind of convinced me. This was not just wanting to become a monk for I don't know what reason. This was really just almost my purpose in life. And then from that time on, I just told all my friends, I'm never going to disrobe. And I was honestly true to my word. Many times you saw other monks disrobe, but I thought, no, there's no hope. And even when, I don't know any of you who know this, there was a monk sent to Australia before me, Ajahn, and he eventually did fall in love and get married. He had to disrobe, obviously. And then we needed someone to look after the monastery in Perth. This was about 35 years ago or something. And so they asked me, obvious choice, I'd built much of the monastery, senior by now. And so I said, I'll let you know after about 3 days. And I looked at myself, meditated, really inquired deeply within. Ajahn Brahm, is there any likelihood of you ever disrobing? I asked a tough question. And it was a very easy one to answer, because I'd seen what happened when a senior monk, who many people respect, disrobes, becomes a layperson. People really lose a lot of faith. It's very easy to destroy people's faith. But I looked at myself, no way I'm ever going to disrobe. So that's why I took on the job as being abbot of Bodhinyana Monastery and spiritual director, BSWA, and spiritual advisor of Buddhist Society Victoria, and spiritual director of something else and something else and something else. Because I know there's no way I could ever disrobe. I do take off my robes sometimes. When I go in the shower, that's the only time I can disrobe. Other than that, there's no way. This is my life. Go on.
Ajahn, I'm a newbie in meditation, alright? I'm just curious to know, you related the story of the athletic whose parents approached the monk to do meditation to calm her down to excel. I think that's great. I'm wondering whether in Australia or in other countries where you are patrons to those Buddhist organizations, whether you see that meditation is built as a syllabus in school for children to learn it up, so that we, I would say me, don't have to know meditation when I'm already that old, So I think it's a good learning in school to build that up. Probably they can excel in their studies better.
I totally agree with you. And I taught meditation when I was a school teacher, because after I graduated, finished university, I knew my mother was concerned about me. If I became a monk and it didn't work out, what would I do next? And so I became a school teacher for 1 year, solely out of respect for my mother. So she knew at least I had a career if case Manko didn't work out. But then, after about 2 months being a school teacher, you had to take the morning assembly for the whole class of kids, 650 of them, from 11-year-olds to 17, 18-year-olds. And I decided I'm going to teach them meditation. So the first lesson is, it's like I see you here, but many more, and they're all kids, small ones and big ones in the back. And so I said, I'm now going to teach you some meditation. And I told them, they're already sitting on the floor, cross your legs, put your back straight, put your right hand over your left hand, tuck your chin in slightly, and they all followed. And I said, start watching your breathing. Only for 5 minutes. And I must have been a bit stupid, because one of the teachers asked me afterwards, what would you have done if even one of the kids misbehaved and started laughing? And that brought me out into a sweat. I never even contemplated that, I even thought about that. All you needed is one kid out of 650 to start laughing, and that would have broken the whole session. But they all totally behaved. And they all did that meditation. When I asked them, okay, 5 minutes is up now, please come out of the meditation. That's why they all started clapping. Even these kids who've never meditated before in their life, in like a Christian area of the country, they enjoyed it. And they were looking forward to the next assembly when I could do it again. For 5 days I taught them how to meditate. It works. And children love it. They want to. It's a great way to start the day. One of my disciples was a teacher in a strong Christian school, year 6, which was like 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. And she introduced meditation there, but she followed my advice, don't call it meditation, that's too Buddhist, the parents will object. Call it quiet time. Exactly the same thing. She called it quiet time. And it was fantastic. The kids would start with a couple of minutes of quiet time at the beginning of the day. She built it up over the year until they did about 10 minutes. And then sometimes, some of the extra things which she noticed, if ever there was like an argument in that class, boys and girls, they started getting aggressive towards each other. One of the children would put their hand up, Miss, can we have quiet time now? And everyone would stop what they were doing, and they would sit down and meditate for 5 or 6 minutes. And they always solved any crisis in that classroom. It created harmony. And I was in a strong Christian school, and it was so effective. I remember the principal of that school invited me, and when I went into his office he said, I am a strong Christian. This is in a strong Christian area of Perth. Sometimes I get complaints from the parents, and I just tell them, go and have a look for yourself. This is, the kids in this class over the years do much, much better in their results. Their education is improved, and they're far more friendly than any other class in the school. Even though I'm a Christian, he said, I support this and I'm going to back her even if they want to sack me. It does work. Oh yeah.
What I'm saying, Ajahn, is like, I think people equate meditation to Buddhism. So I think it's misunderstood, because then the reaching out is not that great.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is that if meditation is built in for people when they're still young, so when they are advanced in their old age, then there will be less depression, less people who commit suicide. But I don't see that happening in Malaysia. Because most temples that I've been, I see that more into prayers, more into prayers. But I think meditation is a niche, N-I-C-H-E, is a niche that that we can go into to reach out to wider people, wider communities, which currently is kind of misunderstood because it's parked under religion. Thank you.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And it's wonderful when people do that. They do lots and lots and lots of meditation. Even I taught meditation in many schools. Jewish schools, Catholic schools. We don't have a Buddhist school in Perth. And the reason why I blocked having Buddhist schools in Perth is because I thought schools for kids, it should be where they meet one another, make friends across religions, across where you came from, across gender. If you're a kid, make friends. And don't care who you make friends with. Because I know that some of my best friends, they're not Buddhists, but I grew up with them, and they'll always be my friend. But anyway, to teach that meditation, can you please give it another name, like quiet time? Just do some marketing. It really works. So each one of you, monks here, I know some of you are already doing a lot. Sorry? Write the book, you've done the book. Oh yeah. Oh yes. I'm a bit old for writing books now, I must admit. But if anybody wants to write that and use what I said, one of the experiences I had a couple of years ago, it just happened to be in Singapore. And I was visiting there at Waisak time. And somebody said, can you please come to the school to teach meditation? I didn't ask them what school was it. Kindergarten. They wanted me to teach 3, 4, 5-year-olds about what Waisak was. And what I did is one of the most successful things I've ever done. I said, I just remembered when I was a primary school kid, the teacher said, pretend you're a tree in the forest. And I said, okay kids, pretend you're the Buddha just born. You do 7 steps, then you put your finger up, not that finger, this finger. Though this is my last birth, I'm the chief in the world. That's part of the story of the Buddha's birth, and every one of those children did that. And then they had a big statue of the Buddha meditating. So this is when the Buddha became enlightened. Now sit down just like the Buddha. You see the way he's got his legs crossed, or his palms in his lap, back straight again, chin down, and close your eyes. And imagine you're the Buddha, just enlightened, how it must feel like. You don't have to worry about going to school anymore. You're free of that. You don't have to worry about being sick or people bullying you. You're sitting under a beautiful tree in the afternoon, totally at peace, not afraid of anything. Even any animals in the forest will be there to protect you. Just like Muchalinda, the serpent who covered the Buddha during a rainstorm. You're totally free. You've got nothing to worry about, nothing to be concerned about. You don't have to live up to anybody's expectations. You're totally free. And as I was doing this, these 3, 4, 5-year-olds were really getting into it. And not only them, the parents who were watching also followed along. And so did the teachers. And when I opened my eyes, one of the teachers was watching me and said, "No, carry on." And it was so successful that after I finished, all the parents said, "Why don't you ever teach that to us?" The meditation, you can use imagination. I haven't got time now, but tomorrow morning, imagine you're sitting there, totally enlightened. Imagine what it must feel like. You don't have to worry about anything, no familiar responsibilities, no work responsibilities, no health, no problems about have you got enough money to pay your bills. You're totally free of all of that, totally at peace, being so happy just to be in this moment, not wanting anything, because you see the perfection in this moment right now. I better stop, because I get into it as well. Okay? Go on.
It's getting late. I think Ajahn Brahm also have a long day. So I still have 3 questions here. We keep it for tomorrow. So whoever asks this question, tomorrow you have to come back to get an answer for your questions.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for asking those questions. Sometimes they're the best thing of the whole talk. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. What does sadhu mean? In English, the best translation is awesome. Or if you like, cool. A very cool thing to say. I know that sometimes people in England would use the word wicked, but I don't like that word. They use the word wicked to mean good, or powerful, fantastic. But anyway, awesome is much better. Thank you all for listening, and have a safe journey home. For those on retreat, have a nice rest. Don't push yourself too much.